Washington, D.C., April 20. Washington center Marcin Gortat, 13, is knocked to the ground in the second half during the Washington Wizards' defeat of theToronto Raptors 122-103 in Game 3 of the NBA Eastern Division playoffs in Washington, D.C. on April 20, 2018. Photo by John McDonnell, The Washington Post. John McDonnell, The Washington Post. You have to be careful when trying to read the Washington Wizards. They are a complex team, full of contradictions and idiosyncrasies, overflowing with the randomness of youth. They are difficult to define because the vast dictionary might not contain a word for their mercurial manner. They are maddening, and then they are electrifying. Perhaps the Wizards can be explained best through the prism of confrontation. It is their biggest weakness. They refuse to live in serenity. It is their most overlooked strength. Conflict fuels their ever-fluctuating competitive fire. They love a good fight, and if the opponent can't make them chippy, they bark among themselves. The Wizards aren't yet a team that can quietly and methodically play to a standard with consistency. They are an emotional volcano. When they're dormant, all seems well, but it rarely is, and problems start spreading. When they erupt, all seems chaotic, but they need the upheaval to play their most intense basketball. This first-round series with the Toronto Raptors is interesting now because the Wizards have erupted. The players aren't pretending with each other and avoiding difficult conversations. Neither is coach Scott Brooks, although his tone is more even-keeled. And the Wizards aren't sitting back and letting the Raptors dictate the series anymore. During a 122-103 victory in Game 3, Washington cut Toronto's series lead to 2-1 in a physical and testy game that included 5 technical fouls. In Game 4 on Sunday at Capital One Arena, the Wizards can crawl out of this hole, and now they understand the edge they need to compete with the Eastern Conference's no. "We've just got to keep the same mean mentality," said power forward Markieff Morris, who helped set a tone 2.5 minutes into the game Friday night while tussling with Anunoby, which resulted in both players receiving technical fouls. "If they want to fight, we can fight. We're talking about basketball fighting, of course, which is little more than shoving and aggressive hugging. If a player balls his fist or goes as far as taking a swing, he'll do something uncharacteristically uncoordinated so that he doesn't land it. They spend more time talking about what they're going to do than actually trying to implement that foul-mouthed plan. Nobody's fighting out here," Toronto guard Kyle Lowry admitted. "Let's get that right," said Wizards guard John Wall, who was part of a third-quarter squabble that resulted in technicals for himself, Bradley Beal and Toronto forward Serge Ibaka. "We're just being aggressive. We know nobody out there is trying to fight or going to fight anybody. But if my teammates get into anything, I'm trying to back those guys up and play a physical, aggressive game." For the Wizards, few things reinforce the value of team better than a squabble. And it's not just confrontation with the opponent. Wall and Marcin Gortat were caught on camera having an animated conversation on the bench during Game 2 while Beal buried his face in a towel. Before Game 3, Brooks met with Wall and Beal to have a much-needed discussion about how they can best lead the Wizards. Brooks met with Otto Porter Jr., his third max contract player, too. He also publicly entertained the idea of starting Mike Scott over Gortat. On the surface, it looked like the Wizards were a crumbling team that had grown tired of each other, and maybe they are. But there's also the possibility that they needed to get real with each other, and now that they have, they could play with better chemistry. It's lazy and inaccurate to say flatly that the Wizards hate each other. Youth, competitiveness, and the lack of a great leader complicate the relationships on this team. Wall and Beal are great players, but they often aren't galvanizing forces. The pieces on this roster seem like they should fit together judging by the skills of individuals, but the personalities don't match the players' talents. All makes for a weird team, a passive-aggressive team, a team that alternates between trying too hard to be cool and losing its competitive spark as a result and burning hot, sometimes too hot. The Wizards are missing something to equalize them. They don't possess the nuance to fall somewhere between frigid and scorching. But when in doubt, it's best for this team to ignite that fire, even if egos are damaged and their emotions make them stumble from time to time. "It sounds crazy, but sometimes, we need that," Gortat said. "We need that." In the locker room, Wall and Gortat are jokingly referred to as an old married couple because they bicker so much. Wall yells. Gortat screams back. Wall misunderstands, like during the whole team win tweet controversy earlier this season. Gortat explains. Somehow, they come back together on the court, and on Friday, their chemistry was the best it has been in a while. Gortat scored 16 points, grabbed 5 rebounds and made 8 of 10 shots. Wall scored 28 points and dished 14 assists, many of which were to his screen-setting center. Beal added 28 points and made 4 of the Wizards' 10 three-pointers. No one was fighting. No one was hiding his face under a towel. Any bad feelings had been squashed. It's just unbelievable how you're down 2 games, and people are already saying we're going to get swept and stuff like that, Gortat said. People are coming up with crazy stories that me and John argue on the bench during the timeout in Toronto. It's just crazy, man. It's BS basically. We've had those conversations for 5 years on the bench. Nobody's arguing stuff. We came out and we showed how great chemistry we have, me and John. Basically, we played our game. Everybody contributed. That was us. But it's not as simple as Gortat makes it sound, either. When Brooks met with Wall and Beal, he discussed their body language. He told them that they needed to lead with their play and their attitudes. They looked upbeat and determined in Game 3. It's no surprise that the entire team followed. We need both of our guys to step up and play good basketball, Brooks said. Part of being an all-star is just not your numbers. It's how you present. How's your body language, your defensive disposition, your mentality? That's what we had. Our mindset was about getting stops. Our mindset was about the right things. We weren't focused on anything else other than winning the possession, and when you do that, it just adds up for everybody. They played like all-stars. They fought like all-stars. Both want to be the best, and at times, that means competing with each other. But the Wizards need them to compete against the Raptors. They were special in Game 3. They will have to be special for the rest of the playoff run if the Wizards want to survive for a good while. By playing with toughness, the Wizards found unity in Game 3. Asked where that strong-willed team had been, forward Kelly Oubre Jr. shook his head and said, "In heaven? I don't know. Hallelujah, those Wizards are back."